Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have, for the first time ever, two very special guests today. I lied. Okay, so my son was a special guest, and my coach came on one time, and he introduced my coach as the guy who talks too much. So my son is very imaginative and creative, and we'll talk about him a little bit more in a minute. But who are my fantastic guests? Who are you, and what do you do?
So I'm Alegre Ramos, and this is my biz bestie,
Natascha Corrigan. Hi.
And I don't want to speak for Natascha, but just to give a quick overview, we are moms, educators, entrepreneurs who are on a mission to help moms and caregivers prioritize themselves, save time, and accomplish their goals. And we do this by creating accessible, actionable, brain science-based content. So we have 2 books and 3 web courses.
Yes, that's what we're about together collectively, beyond your wildest dreams. And I'm just going to share a little bit about, why I'm part of BYWD. I was looking at Alegra, and she was just kicking butt in her life. Like, we just talked a moment ago before we hit record, right? Like how we are wearing so many different hats as moms, and we just get pulled in different directions, and we need support. And I saw Alegra just like not only being an amazing mom and homeschooler, but also really rocking out on personal projects of her own, running her own businesses and all this kind of stuff. And I just felt like, yes, I was a stay-at-home, work-from-home mom. And yes, I was getting the lunch in the kids' lunch boxes and picking them up mostly on time from school and doing my home business. But I wasn't feeling like I was like doing the things that I really wanted to do, or at least not making traction on those things. And I look at Alegra, and she's kicking butt in that area, in those areas, all those areas. And I was like, girl, what is your secret? Like, what do you do? Like, how do you get so much done? Plus she's homeschooling too. Like I sent my kids to homeschool and I still not feel like I don't have enough time to do it, and she had already been doing this, like planning and life design stuff on her own for herself, just having gleaned things from all different areas. And she was like, well, let me give you some tips and tricks. And I really started to dig down on that at the beginning of March 2020. I sat down at the beginning of that month, and I was like, all right, now I'm really going to go ahead and start doing those things and implementing the things that Alegra told me to do. And then bam, pandemic hit, so all that kind of went out the window at that moment. But she and I connected, and she was like, well, did you start with the little things that I'd already kind of kicked your way? And I was like, well, yeah, I kind of sort of started. And she was like, well, let's see if we can kind of like shepherd this together. And then next thing you know, we're doing BYWD.
It's so cool how, like, what we were talking about before we hit record was that we kind of create the thing that we needed, that we would have had, right? So who I am is in my business is I'm the mom support coach, because every mom needs support. And the times that I've been happiest in my life have been when I've had support. And I didn't think about it when I named myself that, but I was like, oh my gosh, it's so true. And then the same with Imperfect Momming, where I literally felt like I had to be perfect growing up, that that who I am and how I behave was a reflection on my parents. And then one day I realized, oh,
if I believe that I'm a reflection on my parents, then I also believe that my son's a reflection on me. And so, and that explained a lot of like how I used to react to how he would behave in public. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting, where I felt like I had to be perfect. And then I have the podcast of imperfect momming. And then you guys had a response to that, which made me have a response. Do you remember what your response was?
So I was talking about, this is Allegra, and I was talking about how I had just finished a fiction book where the book is all about being the best at what you do. And at some point, the main characters have a conversation where the daughter is like, well, you wanted me to be the best. And he said something along the lines of, I wanted you to try your hardest. I wanted you to maybe try your best, right? I didn't want you to be the best. I wanted you to have more in your life. And this character, all she has is her career. And she is, if not the best, then among the best, right? But she's really internalized this message of having to be the best. And what I loved is not only watching this character evolve to where she realizes, oh, maybe there's more in life than this, but also at the very end, the author is clearly, she's a mom and she's talking to her daughter and she says, I feel like you have a real opportunity here to know that you're valuable just because you're a human being. And if you want to do great things, I'll be here for you. But if you just want to do whatever it is you want to do, that's perfect too. And I think a lot of us who were, I was born in the 70s, raised in the 70s, 80s, were raised to really just achieve. And the focus was on the achievement and not necessarily on what you learned in that process or whatever. And it's a slippery slope because, like this character in this book, you can keep achieving forever and it never ends. Like, when's enough?
Yeah.
And is it even what you want? And I think those are the questions that our generation of parents are really thinking about as we raise our kids. I know Natascha and I think about those things.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I can totally relate to you're saying, like, especially early on, like my kid behavior in public as a reflection on me, that even when he was an infant, like, if I couldn't get, like, if he like would go over and maybe like hit a kid on the playground, I'm just like, oh my God, he's violent. You know what I mean? Like, and now and this is a thing that kids do, right? Like, I mean, not that you want your kid bullying the playground, but kids hit each other sometimes, or they grab a toy and I'm like, oh, he's acting selfish, you know what I mean? Or something ridiculous like that, and here he is like a year and a half old, 2 years old. He just wants the truck, you know what I mean? And like, I'm like, and just, I had to really consciously like dismantle the idea of like, well, we share in our family. Like, he doesn't get the concept of sharing yet. Like, this is just, and learning about developmental stages and brain science about like, kids are just not wired yet to share. Like, that's a concept that they're not going to really even remotely understand till a later milestone, and learning about that and dismantling, these completely ridiculous, unrealistic expectations for my kid has also helped me cancel my own crazy, unrealistic expectations for myself too. And one of the things that Allegra and I have inserted in all of our courses, all of our books, is the idea of not trying to go for 100%. Like, so whether it's we're talking about or, teaching about developing a morning routine or how to tackle your to-do list so that it works for you, or just like we have a life design course too. This idea that like, we talk about habit tracking and all these different concepts that help us, go ahead and move the needle down the, I'm mixing metaphors, move the needle or, get the ball down the field or however you want to say it. It's not about 100% all the time. We're definitely, we are very careful to say, we're not like, we don't want to turn you into a productivity robot. Like, that's, what's the fun in that, And we often just say, if you're hitting 70%, you are crushing it,
Yeah.
You have a 70% day, and sometimes we have 30% days, right? Where we're like, you only get 30% of the things you said you want to get done. But if you're, showing up pretty consistently where you can say, yeah, somewhere around 70%, that is huge, right? So and so for sure, we just 100% and perfection is not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not.
And it makes you drop out of the race, right? Like I had a month where I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do every single thing I wrote down. And I got pretty close to 100%. And I called one of my besties and I said, so I pretty much did everything I wanted to do this month. And I hated it. It was so painful. And I can tell you right now, I'm never doing it again. Like, I'm just not. I don't care how much I accomplished. I'm not doing it again. And really, Natascha and I's business is a perfect example of 70%, because over the course of 2 years, we've come out with 2 books and 3 web courses, all just by doing a little bit regularly.
That's so incredible. I'm very fascinated by authors because I am one too.
Yes, I heard that on one of your podcasts.
Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, my strength at the time when I became a coach, my comfort level was in writing, even though I hadn't written in 12 years. I still had more confidence in my writing ability than I did in my speaking ability at that time. And so I started with a book. But I'm always fascinated by writers because there's just, you know, this creative spirit. And even while you were talking about the fiction book that you were reading, I was like, what a cool way of imparting a lesson and personal development without being a personal development book. And I feel like that's where I'm going to be going in some of my writing, in my writing future, because I used to really enjoy creative writing, and I've gotten a lot into the nonfiction for a while. But I still have, you know, a little soft spot in my heart, but I want to help. So it's like, well, that's the best way to do it, is like have a character who goes through this personal development journey, and
Absolutely.
the person reading goes along this personal development journey right along with the character. And it's a beautiful, I love books that are like a Jedi mind trick for for like Dr. Dan Siegel is beautiful in his parenting from the inside out, because it's a parenting book, but it's really a personal development book disguised as a parenting book. So I just went on a writing tangent.
No, I totally get it, because I actually so in my 20s, I did stand-up, and I have started doing stand-up again because a lot of my career has been things that are good for people. But I definitely notice that when you make things that people want, they consume it more easily. And I was inspired to start doing comedy again because I feel like the current women comedians that I really like, that I'm seeing, talk about things that weren't talked about when I was in my 20s. You know, comedy in my 20s there was a lot of mean humor, and, you know, it was very male dominated, still very male dominated, but women are really carving a niche out for themselves. And I credit, you know, streaming is making that accessible, right? They don't have to just be in clubs. They can now come to you straight onto your phone or computer. And so I consume a lot of stand-up comedy that way. And I love that there's this one comedian, actually, he's a man, funny enough, but he has this great song, and he says, like, I'm just going to end racism right now with this song. His name is Jared de Guzman, right? And he plays the song, and it's interracial babies, right? Something like that. And he's like, do you feel the racism leaving your body? And so he's talking about a serious thing, but in a very humorous way. And I get to do that through my comedy as well. So I hear what you're saying in terms of like slipping in it's a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. And you mentioned that you were born in the 70s. And if you guys are listening to the podcast, go over to YouTube to @Mom Support Coach and come look at Alegra and Natascha, because neither of them look, I don't know how old you are, Natascha, but I'm assuming you're in the same age group, but neither of them look older than me. I think that they look like my age, or maybe even a little bit younger, but that's incredible. So
We're
I'm
the
actually-
exact same age, Natasha and I.
Yeah.
so you know, it's age is a sensitive thing for people sometimes, but when you don't look your age, people love to hear that. So,
Yeah.
I'm just going to do some face yoga right
Yeah,
now.
face yoga.
Right?
Face yoga.
As you say that.
Please watch the YouTube.
Yeah, Natasha and I are both on the verge of being 49.
My goodness. And I just turned 40. So like you guys are, and I still feel like I look 35. So you guys, in my head, you guys look about 35. So there you go.
Fantastic. I'll take it. I'll take it.
So one of the stories that I told before we hit record was how Allegra was saying that we grew up with the get it done, like produce, right? Like a lot of our parents were that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've kind of shifted a little bit in this generation. And one of my teachers wrote a book called Daddy, Are You Proud of Me? He was the guest that my son said is the guy who talks too much. And in fairness, Sean does talk too much, but he's always giving value with what he says. And I was just listening to him all the time. And so like I would listen to one 1 hour video and then I'd listen to the next 1 hour video. And so my son didn't know the difference. And he's like, this guy talks too much.
Oh, that's funny. That's like, I'm listening to an audiobook. That person talks too much. Well, it's an audiobook.
So he wrote a book called Daddy, Are You Proud of Me? And it's the father-daughter relationship, and the goal is to, teach dads how to parent daughters because dads don't have a clue. And one of the things that he says is that just to say, I'm proud of you, not because, just I'm proud of you, because we all need that. So he's putting it in the context of women need to hear that from their dads, but we all need to hear that. So I try to say that to my son yesterday when I'm dropping him off at school, and he's like, why? I'm like, I'm just proud of you. But why? I'm just proud of you. But what? But you have give me a reason why. It is so ingrained. But when he was in 3rd grade, he started having this test anxiety. That's the best thing that I can label it as, is just he's freaking out about having to take this test. And I'm like, dude, just do the best that you can. And he goes, but I don't know all the answers. And I'm like, I know, do the best that I can. And he goes, but I can't get 100%. I know, do the best that you can. And I don't remember how he communicated to me that do the best that you can to him was meaning, well, the best that I can is 100%.
Right.
Because that's the best that you can do is 100%. And I don't know how to get 100%. I'm like, well, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is this, communication technique of when something's really important, maybe ask the person, okay, so how do you interpret what I just said? Because you never know, right? Like even just Natasha and I were talking earlier and she asked me a question and I had a frog in my throat. So I went, no. And I was like, wait, that was not what I meant. I meant no.
That was an aggressive no.
Yeah. I was like,
all right, geez.
But there are definitely times where, and I try to do it more frequently now, but when I notice that the way someone is reacting to what I'm saying is not what I'm expecting, I say, okay, so what are you hearing? How do you take that?
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is very common. I see it happen all the time. Mm-hmm. So you can't guarantee that what you say is what they hear.
Right.
Yeah.
I have to say that my relating to the do your best is much different. My boys are in the Scouts now. And the motto for Cub Scouts is do your best, right? It used to be prepared. And I think it's still, that is still the motto for a Boy Scout, but for Cub Scouts, it's do your best. And what's so funny is that like, the moms that the mom who's our den leader, and then, you know, quite honestly, most of the kids of the parent that shows up for them for the meetings and so forth are moms right now. And the mom is the den leader, you know, we're talking about how we're going to maybe set up our next meeting and do the next venture and how we're going to do it. And she's always just like, well, we're just going to do our best. Right. She's, you know, she's like, that's our, and so my relating to that phrase has shifted quite a bit to like, you know, we don't have to show up perfectly as den moms and den leaders and in our den adventure. You know, we're going to do our best, right? We have this one little adventure, there's one component of it. And, you know, I had forgotten to bring an item that we needed. Okay, so we pivoted, right? We just do our best or do your best. And that's definitely shifted around that for our family because my boys hear it a lot and it's showing up as, yeah, you're going to come and give your best effort, but that may not look like perfection, you know, and that I got to credit the Scouts for me relating to that idea as differently than, like you said, your son's context was like, be the best, right? Or be the best at it, as opposed to bring your best, you know, it may not look like perfection.
I like bring your best. I think we settled on do what you can. And that felt a lot more forgiving to him.
Yeah.
Then after a while he said, Mom, that's starting to sound like do your best or do the best or be perfect. And I said, well, here's the reality, because what's going on a lot in the world right now is you need to change what you say and do so that I don't feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what I subscribe to. I need to change and understand that what you mean is this, or I need to ask you, what do you mean by that? Okay, when I hear that, I hear this, but I understand what you mean. So when you say what you say, I'm going to hear what I need to hear. Instead of, you need to change what you say so that I can feel better. Because everybody's going to cooperate with the way that you see the world. So in order to, my big thing is I want to have peace in my life. So I can't control what you say or do in order for me to have peace. So I'm going to control what I say and do and what I hear and how I interpret so that I can have peace.
Right.
Right. And just the understanding too, that there's the possibility of something occurring differently for everyone. There's room for everybody's experience of whatever it is, right? That I see it differently. I feel it differently, and having room for somebody else experiencing it differently. You know, I have this conversation with my son a lot about, you know, how things, both of my kids, how things show up for them, you know, that there might be a different interpretation and for somebody else, like they don't have to see it the way you see it in order for it to, you know, exist. You know, like one son really wants things to just fit in his version of things, you know? Yeah.
And this is such an important lesson, because by doing this with our kids, by explaining to them that they might interpret it differently than we intended, hopefully what they can learn from that lesson too is that this will apply to communications they have with other people, right? Either their friends or maybe people from different backgrounds than them. Because, you know, I have this bit that I'm working on for my commie routine about how, you know, we just really just need to be more tolerant. Like we're all on some sort of, you know, I forget what the term was that I'm trying to use, but we all have different levels of, right, concern about being neat or, you know, being put together or being on time, or, you know, how we answer each other or the kind of questions we ask. We all are different. And we just all need to give each other a little bit of grace and say, okay, well, that's how that person is. And I'm going to try and figure out how we can navigate living in this world together in a peaceful way. Because, you know, if we are having these kinds of like interactions where you're not completely understanding each other with your children, right? People that you spend a lot of the day with, why do we expect to perfectly understand that complete stranger over there, right? Who just said something that really offends me, and yet I don't know that person at all, right? Like maybe they're talking on their Bluetooth and someone just said, what's the most what's the most challenging question you can think of to ask someone, or what's the most offensive thing someone's ever said to you? And they're just answering that question, right? But I'm taking it personally because I was like, well, are you saying that to me?
Yeah.
Like, who knows what they're going through, right? So
someone pointed out to me that a phrase that I use a lot is that we're doing the best that we can with the tools and the resources that we have at the time. And I said that to my mom, and I you know, I'm very well-trained coach, and she kind of reacted like she was going to argue with that statement. And I'm like, but it's the tools and resources that we have at the time. Tools, we may have a wrench in our what are those called? Toolbox. You can tell how much I use toolboxes. Anyway, we might have a wrench in the toolbox, but when we reach for the wrench, we might grab a screwdriver, and like, because that's what we can reach at the time, which means that's the resource that we have, right? So I might reach for the wrench, but all I can find is a screwdriver, and well, I'm going to have to do what I can with that screwdriver at the time.
Yep.
And I think once I added the resources, that's kind of when she kind of reacted when I said the tools, and then I said resources, and she kind of calmed down a bit. And, you know, that gets a lot of people out of a lot of stuff for me. Like the person you cut you off in traffic.
Right.
They probably have to pee right now. Or my favorite thing is their wife is in labor. Like there's something that's real important for that person that they cut me off. So you know what? You needed that space more than I did right now. By all means.
Absolutely.
I didn't hit you.
If we just all gave each other more grace, it'd just be a lot easier. Yeah. And talking about tools and resources too, I just want to go back to kind of what we do and why we do it. You know, Natascha and I both have businesses. I have a business background. I have an MBA, and I started studying productivity and habit formation when I was getting my MBA, and that's when I really got into it. And one of the things I realized was that I was actually succeeding the most in my personal life when I was applying tools and resources that I had learned in business school to my personal life. And I realized that not everyone has access to that. And that's really what we hope to do with our books and our content, our courses, is to help give people who might not have access to this education and phrase it in a way that makes sense to them and for their lives, and give them those tools.
So because it was funny. Tell me about your books.
So we have 2 books. They're both short reads, because have you ever read a nonfiction book that's 400 pages and you think that could have been 40 pages? Maybe.
None are popping into my head, but I'm sure I'm sure I've stopped before I got to page 400.
Right. Exactly. So the first book is 3, 2, 1 Done, 3 Simple Strategies to Get Your To-Do List Done. And both of our books, all of our books, are really workbooks, because as educators, we know that the best way to help someone learn something is by doing, right? Just telling you the theory is not going to get you doing the thing. So 3 Simple Strategies to Get Your To-Do List Done. We go through the 3 mistakes that keep your to-do list growing and growing and growing. And we give you the 3 ways to overcome that so that you can actually start crossing things off your to-do list, or checking, or as we like to do, highlighting.
Yes.
You just really intrigued me by, what are the 3 things that we do wrong? What? She's
Natascha?
Like,
yeah.
Actually,
number
this
1
is good practice for tonight. We're actually doing this live tonight.
We're doing a little live workshop tonight. Number 1 is putting everything on your to-do list, like everything, like brush your teeth, which is how I used to do my to-do list. Because, you know, like I'd be like, okay, I'm going to write my to-do list of things I have to do today. And I'd be like, brush my teeth, check, did it. You know what I mean? Like, so
Walk
like
the dog.
walk the dog. Yeah. These things that, you know, I'm already going to do. I'm definitely already doing it. Right. And so there's no need to put it down on to-do list, but we're tempted to do that because it feels so good to cross things off, you know, and it feels like, oh, great, I'm going to create this momentum. But the thing that backfires is that you get a little release of dopamine when you cross things off, which is great. This is how our brains are designed, so that you feel like accomplished. And so next thing you know, you've crossed off 5 things off your list, but those are things you've A, already maybe done, or B, definitely already going to do anyway. And next thing you know, you've crossed 5 things off and you've got this nice hit of dopamine and you feel accomplished, and you don't actually get to the things that you really need to do, want to do, those things that are going to, like, you know, sit down and write. You know, if you're writing a new book, right? And you're just kind of like, oh, I got to write 10 pages today or whatever. I'm not that kind of author, but so, you know, whatever it is. And then but you've gotten their dopamine hit from crossing off walking the dog, brushing your teeth, folding the socks, or whatever, you know, those things that you were already going to do. So you don't really kind of feel the need to get to those items that you wanted, you know, that really are going to move you forward. So that's a biggie. And that is 100% how I used to operate on my to-do list all the time. You know?
Okay, so what's funny is that I have wash my face, brush my teeth, take my vitamins, and there's one other one that I do without fail. And they're on there because they make me feel good to check them off. And I've had people tell me, don't put that stuff on your to-do list, but nobody told me why. So I'm like, well, screw you. I'm going to put whatever I want to do on my to-do list.
Absolutely. Makes you feel good, right?
Right.
Makes you feel good. Totally. Absolutely. But
We actually heard a productivity person say to do that to make you feel good. But
yeah,
then you realize, oh, wait, but my brain only wants so much dopamine, and then I feel accomplished and I can move on with my day. That's you know, Natasha and I talk about how to get your family on board with things. And one of the tips that we give for that is to share one more piece of information. Don't just share the what, share the why.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we really do a good job of, is not just telling you what to do, but why you might want to do it.
Yeah. So try that. And yeah, your to-do list is going to look thinner, skinnier, which sometimes, like, for someone like me who has, like, you know, my busyness is a way to sometimes not have to be present to myself, right? So I can be really, 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 really busy. And if I have a long to-do list, A, I'm important, B, I'm super busy, you know, like this kind of thing. So it feels good to, like, cram it full of stuff that I then start checking off, right? But if my to-do list is shorter, and the only the things that, like, really need my attention are on it, it may be a little uncomfortable to sit with, like, oh yeah, I am looking at this thing that, like, I really do have to write this email to, you know, to my clients that I've kind of been putting off. But, you know, if I've gone ahead and checked all these other things around it, it seems like, oh yeah, I'm getting stuff done, you know, like, and so it is kind of uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable thing a little bit to not maybe put all those things that feel accomplishy. And if it's definitely things, Lisa, that you're already doing, you know, that you don't have to really track, you know, and we have this whole thing about habit tracking and stuff too. It's different. If it's already a habit that's already ingrained, we really encourage you to see about, like, not putting it on there, and then just see how, you know, it may feel a little uncomfortable at first. Let me tell you, like, I definitely had, like, my self-worth tied in with how busy I am being, you know. And if I look over at my to-do list, you're like, ooh, look at all that. Like Alegra just mentioned, we highlight the things on our to-do list as opposed to crossing off or checking off. But if I look over and I'm like, oh wow, look at that page, it's all yellow from all the stuff I'm doing, you know, it has, like, this sense of importance and accomplishment that, like, is kind of, like, a little bit detrimental to actually getting the things done that I say I really want to get done.
And I just like to offer a reframe, because we talk about reframing in our course a lot. And maybe instead of thinking, wow, like, I'm getting my self-worth because of this big list, and I don't know if I'll feel as valuable if I shorten that list. What about thinking instead, think about the fact that you're making space for things that might be more exciting for you or more fulfilling for you, or right? Consider all that space you're making.
For
Like
sure.
sometimes you just need to tweak like that.
Yeah, it's absolutely a shift. 100%, you know. Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of what I use my, because I use Microsoft To Do because I like having reoccurring events and I love Microsoft everything. So, and no, I'm not being plugged by them. But
we'd be getting paid if that was the case.
Exactly. I mean, Microsoft, if you want to pay me, like I love your stuff. Like it's cool. I will have nothing but good things to say about it. But I use it a lot. Some of the things as reminders, like I have today I have a campaign to run on my texting program. So if that wasn't on there, I might not remember that today's the 1st of February. And as we're recording this, it'll be released in April. But today's the 1st of the month. I have a campaign that I run on the 1st of the month to text my customers that it's their birthday and they need, you know, here's your birthday discount and whatnot. And I might not remember that today's the 1st if I didn't do that. And that's a reality of being busy and just living for the day and not for, you know, what day is it. But there's a lot of things on the to-do list that I don't even pay attention to because I know it's recurring and I don't need to do it today. And like I just updated my website and all of my blogs from the old website need to be transferred over and they get to do that one by one. That's not something that I need to do every day, but I like that it's on there to remind me that I need to get that done at some point. But every day I just move it to the next day. So that is probably doing something psychologically to me too, that I'm not getting the stuff done that's on my to-do list.
Yeah, actually, when you have those sorts of things that you're reminding yourself of, but you're ignoring them, it's basically kind of like a hanging chad. It is taking up mental space in your brain. And it would be better, it might be better, right? We're all different. It might be better to either just take it off or to actually just do it so that you can free up that space. I mean, I don't know about you, but I know that when I have a project that I'm working on around the house and like sometimes I'll leave things out, right? Like yesterday, I polished a bunch of wood. That sounds really weird. I collect wooden bowls and I polished a bunch of them because I had just used one at an event. And so it needed to be polished. So I was like, I'll polish the others. So I put out the oil, right? And it's just sitting there now because I was like, well, maybe there's some other things I should polish. But either I'm going to do it today or I'm going to put that away. Because otherwise it's going to be taking up space in my brain. Because every time I see it, I'm going to think, oh, I need to polish wood. So
yeah, it sounds like you've done things like, then another thing that we don't have this tip specifically in this 3-2-1 done book, but you've gone ahead and automated something already, which is really, really great that you have, you know, it's amazing we have this technology and you have this opportunity to automate, right? So that's one of the things, like what things can you delegate, automate, you know,
eliminate
and eliminate that, you know, don't need to take up space in your brain or on your to-do list, you know, things that like, on the 1st of the month, you get that automation or that that reminder on the 1st of the month that to run your automation or whatever it is, that you don't necessarily need to put on your daily to-do list. For sure. Yeah. It's all talk about that in a second. We all are different. Like I need physical reminders in my space when I'm starting a new habit. It doesn't work for me to track my habits in my planner. I just won't do it. It's just not gonna, that's just not who I am, right? I need a physical reminder in my space to take those supplements, like, you know, and so that's just, I need that, you know? And so that's separate and different than my to-do list. Because it has to occur, like my supplements, it's on a cabinet in my kitchen. So when I go in there to pour my coffee, it's above because the coffee I'll never forget to do, you know? So it's hanging there on the cabinet above my coffee maker because I'm like, oh yeah, right, the supplements, because I'm trying to get in the habit of just taking my daily supplements. That's something I need to track that because that is not automatic for me yet.
Yeah.
And so, however it works for you, that's the other thing that we're really all about is like modify so that it works for you. One way to do something is not the only way to do it.
Well, plus like your reminders, Natascha, the reminder that you have by your supplements, it's a form of automation. It's an analog form of automation.
Yeah,
but essentially it's a reminder for you, right?
Mhm.
So
it's a reminder, and I just track it when I do it. I cross it off, and it just helps me see too, like, oh wow, last week, like, ooh, I did not, it wasn't super consistent, and so it helps me stay consistent. And then also in the case of supplements, like show me like when it's actually, when you're consistent and they actually start working,
Yeah. And that's really, we talk a lot about habit tracking and this kind of consistency, and what she's talking about in our second book, Rock Your Morning, 3 Simple Steps to Take Control of Your Morning. And this book is really all about when you're in the airplane and the flight attendants say, put your oxygen mask on first. And the subtext is, because if you pass out, you can't put your oxygen mask on your child, right? It's that same sort of thing, right? As moms, as parents, we often are asked to give of ourselves, sometimes to our detriment. And I really resist that because I just know that I won't be my best if I don't take care of myself first. And, having a morning ritual is what's known as a keystone habit. So a keystone habit is a habit that has been shown to have ripple effects in your life beyond what you expect. So for instance, another keystone habit is making your bed. And it has an unexpected ripple effect of actually making your sleep better at night, because the process of unmaking your bed sends a signal to your brain. It's like, oh, it is bedtime. It helps to prepare you to go to sleep. And that's an unexpected thing. So that's why a keystone habit. So morning ritual, having a morning ritual or a morning routine or a morning habit, whatever, is another keystone habit because it sets you up for success in many other areas of your life that you might not expect.
Yeah, I try not to say this on every single episode, but I was just a surrogate.
Oh, wow.
And I'm a month postpartum.
Wow.
And for twins, and I'm still pumping because of the physical benefits to my body.
Yeah.
And I wake up at 5 a.m. because that's my rhythm. So at 5 a.m, I'm pumping, and then I listen to a meditation while I'm pumping that's 15 minutes long. So when it stops, so do I. And because a lot of times I'll forget to look at the clock when I hit the start button on the machine. And then I started yoga yesterday, and I did it again today. So woohoo, 2 days in a row. And yesterday was supposed to be a super busy day. There was, even though I have it blocked off so I can only have 3 podcasts recording on a day, I ended up with 4. I had a book club with a friend and a coaching call and a doctor appointment. And I was like, this day is going to be fun and crazy, but I love these conversations. So I'm like, it's either going to energize me or I'm going to collapse at the end of it. I'm not sure which. We'll find out. Well, one of the podcasts I had to reschedule because it was a foggy day, and the time was scheduled at the time I would have to drop my son off at school. So I was like, yeah, we're just going to reschedule you. And another one just disappeared off my calendar. So thank you, universe. I think that was the person rescheduling, but there was like, this system doesn't notify me. Anyway, the book club canceled also. So all of a sudden I had only 3 appointments instead of 18, 7. And I was like, okay, well, what can I do with this free time? And I started cleaning the house, and it needed it, right? So I was tidying and cleaning, and the house got clean, and I was like, I love yoga in the morning because I get so much done and I'm happier doing it. Like, and so this is my long way of saying morning routines are freaking fabulous when you figure out like what energizes you and what sets your day up for success. And I know a lot of it was like the mindset. I didn't tell myself, oh my gosh, this is going to be a crazy day because look at all this stuff on my calendar. I was like, it's either going to be amazing because it's energizing or I'm going to collapse at the end of it, but we'll see what happens. And I knew that I knew something was going to cancel. Like, I just know that that's what's going to happen. But talked a lot.
No, but I, the other thing too is that no matter how hard a day is, I go to sleep knowing I have my morning ritual to look forward to. It's like this present I give myself every morning.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
I love it.
What if it had gone the opposite way, right? So you had 3 things on your plate and then all this stuff shows up and now you have 18 things to do, but you've already done your yoga. You've already done your morning ritual. And this is, like a little gift to yourself. You've done those keystone habits that help you feel centered. Good. Pardon me, my dog is greeting someone at the door. So it works in that way too, right? It sets you up to win in this way that like, maybe it turns into a crazy day that you didn't experience, that you weren't expecting, but you've gotten your yoga, you've gotten your meditation, and you've gone ahead and, you've done the things that help you feel more prepared.
Yeah. You put on your oxygen mask.
And what'll be really fun, I like that analogy. What'll be really fun, Natascha, is if my dogs start answering your dogs. And
hey, it happens, right?
I love the analogy of putting that the morning routine is putting your oxygen mask on first, because we've heard the analogy of put your in reference to self-care, but it's like, but here's why, like because, and I know as long as my morning routine isn't interrupted multiple times in a week, I'm still okay when it gets interrupted, because occasionally someone will wake up earlier than normal. Because right now I have a whole 2 hours in the morning by myself. And, this morning, I woke my son up at 6:30 instead of at 7 because he had some more of his chapter to finish before school started. And so, but it's like, then that ends up being bonus time instead of, God, come on, why are you awake early?
Right. Yeah. And every Thursday I do a sunrise hike with some friends. So I don't do my morning routine first thing in the morning. But it's a trade-off. It's like I'm choosing to do the sunrise hike, which feeds me in another way and is its own morning ritual in a way. But yes,
70%, right?
Yeah, 70%. Exactly.
Live a really fulfilling life that helps move you in the direction of where you want to go without having to be 100% morning routine every morning. Like it doesn't have to be like that. I'm sure you feel really fulfilled doing it, like you said, 5 times a week.
Yeah. And it's sustainable is the bottom line. Like you can keep doing 70% for years.
And just don't beat yourself up about it. You make that the goal instead of 100%. Is there a piece of advice that you want to share with moms?
I feel like we've shared a lot. I guess the thing that we most want to walk away with, moms to walk away with, is that society, our family shoulds on us a lot, right? We should do this. We should look like this. We should be this. And we maybe even should on ourselves because, it feels good to be helpful, to be of service, to be wanted, to feel like you're contributing. But you can't do that if you aren't taking care of yourself. Like you will get to do more of those things when you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And so we really want moms and caregivers to let go of any guilt over taking care of yourself, because logically, if you think about it, you're going to get to do more of that when you take care of yourself. And I do believe you'll just be happier.
Yeah.
Right. And like you, I believe, like you said, I think you mentioned it either earlier or we talked about it, maybe pre-record, this idea that, you know, kids are picking up on what we're doing, right? And not what we're lecturing. And so, you know, if you want your kid to live like, you know, a life that's really fulfilling for them, we get to show them living a life that's fulfilling for us, you know, and that we're not just doing the mommy slog, you know, like just getting through the day, or, you know, getting to show them like, yeah, mom's taking some time for herself and it's okay to, and it's fine. And that being a daily thing too, like that it's not just every once in a while mom goes and gets a massage, you know what I mean? Which is great. Sure, do that, you know, but that self-care is a daily thing, that you're important enough to go ahead and take care of yourself, and showing that, being that, you know, like living that, is an important thing. And, you know, it takes a shift. It's still a shift for me to go ahead and like carve out time for myself and not immediately go into this caretaker only role and then, you know, crash at the end of the day, having not moved anything forward for myself, or, you know, taking care. Sometimes it really is, you know, it still continues to be a challenge for me to not just automatically default to, oh yes, I have to meet everyone else's needs. You know, it really is, I have to be conscious about it.
The thing that I love about be the person that you want your kids to be is when my son starts doing something new that I started doing to improve myself. Like, yeah, the way that, honestly, the way that the intro, which is what you were referring to, it's the intro to the podcast, is the way that came about is my son's grandma, my ex-mother-in-law, said, I know what you do in your house because your son does it when he's in my house. And I'm like, oh God, what does he do? You know, because, you know, that's the first thought that comes, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember being annoyed that my son never puts his shoes away. And then I looked around the house and I had 2 pair and my boyfriend had 3 pair in the living room. And I was like, oh, okay. So, I started putting my shoes in a specific spot in the living room instead of just wherever I took them off. And I started moving everybody else's shoe to this spot too. I said not a word about the shoes being in the living room. I just moved them into the spot every time they were in the way. And pretty soon people started taking their shoe off in that spot. And I was like, yes, mom win, right? Then you're not nagging, you know, it took maybe a week at the most, and then it started happening, and then, you know, I fell off of that. But it's the things that we do. They're watching the things that we do. Like, we don't have to lecture and nag. And I've seen a meme that said, I don't know, my kids do what you do. And they're like, I don't know, my kids have seen me clean up after myself. And they don't. You know, there might need to be some gentle, you know, prodding, but for the most part, they're watching what we're doing. And and they're implementing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not everything. A lot of the stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a book that has been instrumental in your life, in your personal development journey?
So many books.
So many.
I'm just going to look at so once a month with our alumni, we do this monthly course correct.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just an opportunity to review what you did that month. And this is one of the questions. So
yeah, and give yourself acknowledgement for the big and little things that you accomplished that month rather. And then just kind of like, you know, see where you want to take your next month, right? So we do a monthly course correct, and we do an annual course correct at the end of the year. We call it course correct because, this is how the astronauts got to the moon, right? They have their plan and then things go off course and you just kind of correct your course, right? Because life happens and space happens and whatever. So
and
we call it the
spaceship. The spaceship doesn't beat up on itself for getting off course, and it doesn't, it doesn't shame itself.
Houston doesn't say, "Why are you course correcting?"
Right.
Yeah.
Why are you off course?
Right. Yeah. So it's a course correct. And this is, we like to kind of, we just like to we like to language it that way, just instead of just a review, because, and for sure it is a review, but the idea is that we're, you're just kind of gently getting yourself back on course,
Mm-hmm. So none of the books I wrote down this month are books that I would per se, I'm just going to say the first book that came to mind when you said that. So there's a book called Existential Kink.
Oh,
and it's very interesting because if you think of books that are about helping you unpack your baggage, I always forget which way is left brain and right brain, right? But I feel like all the books I've read about that topic have tended to be very like, here are your 10 bullet points and do these things and here are these exercises. Whereas I felt Existential Kink was a lot more intuitive in terms of thinking about these challenges in a more creative way. So if you're interested in unpacking stuff, but maybe the books you've read haven't worked for you, I would suggest trying this one. And one of the biggest takeaway that I tell everyone when I recommend this book is she has this axiom, which is having is evidence of wanting. Either consciously or unconsciously. And she's not talking about random things that happen in your life, but if you keep having the same situation happen over and over again, right? Like a boss who doesn't value you constantly. Every boss doesn't value you. There's something about that situation that you want. And if you can figure it out, it can help you avoid that situation. And sometimes it's a counterintuitive thing. Like, well, I feel like I'm providing more value when a employer, a boss is taking advantage of me. Like, I feel like I'm just giving so much. And it's like, okay, well, if you like that, if you're happy with that, then keep doing it. But now that you know that, do you want to keep, recreating that experience for yourself? So I found that to be very powerful and quite a shift in a relationship experience that I was having regularly that has completely turned around.
Great. It is a great book. It definitely looks at that whole subject of, why things are showing up the way in your life from a completely different angle that I hadn't really experienced either. I would say the number one book that really kind of like, there were from precursor books that like led me to this, but the one that really kind of like cracked open my brain in a way would be The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and just like really being present and the idea of a pain body. This comes up a lot for me when I feel like my son, who is in my perception the most like me, and so therefore triggers me the most because of, he shows up in ways that like, I don't really love it. I don't like the way he's doing that. And quite often it's the thing about myself that I dislike the most, and so therefore I want to tamp it down, don't be that. What I mean? Like, and so, just understanding the concept of pain bodies being triggered, and and that's my pain coming up against his pain and wanting to create more pain around it, and just being aware of that being in the context of parenting. That was a huge, there was a lot of things inside that book aside from being like present, but the concept of pain bodies inside of that, and recognizing that this is like almost like an entity that's reacting, as opposed to, wanting to, because I had a very, oh my gosh, I was going to be like the most peaceful mom you've ever met. You know what I mean? Like, my kids would never touch refined sugar, and like, like all these ideas of the mom that I was going to be. And then the reality of that mom being, and those being so disparate that like, and giving myself a lot of grace around that. That was for sure from on my personal growth journey. Power of Now was a biggie. and there've been a lot since, and there was precursors. And then as far as the and my parenting journey, personal growth journey, which it really is, like parenting is like for me been like the ultimate, personal growth crucible. My goodness, the person I was before I was a parent, I was just like, I'm so like zen and blah. Was a becoming baby. That was helped me so much becoming becoming baby. No, it's been a while since I read it because my babies were little. They were little. It was very helpful and just on how to be present to this new being that's in your life and just allowing that being to be itself, like be himself or herself. Wildly different. Like you're there as like an observer and supporter, as opposed to like, I really thought parents were like, I'm going to mold this child. Like, again, that's so laughable. And for sure, we have influence, as you said, like how you be in the world, they'll show up as. But man, I got a rude awakening that both my sons came preloaded with their own software that they were going to run, and you think like, I'm going to shape this human being. Like, sure, on some level, but man, they came preloaded.
Yeah. There's a book, I don't remember which one, but they said something along the lines of, babies have personalities, and that, and maybe that's their soul or whatever it is, but they're not blank slates when they come into this world. They have been they're preloaded. I love that.
Yeah, they've come preloaded with that software for sure. And
Well,
it was most evident on the first day of my second son's life on this planet. And I was like, oh my God, you're so different than your brother. Like, so, like just in the way that he cried and the way that his needs were and the way that he came out of my body, like so wildly different that I was like, oh, wow, they are not clean slates. They're really not. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually it's funny because I am such an avid reader. I read so many books. I read this many parenting books. Now I read a ton of books about giving birth and being pregnant. And here's the reason why. It wasn't because I didn't buy books. It was because the books were so different that I was like, if I read this one, it's canceling out this one, and this one's canceling out this one. Which one am I going to choose? And I was listening to an NPR episode, and this woman said that her grandmother gave her this advice, and it was read the baby, not the book.
Mm.
And I was like, thank you, universe. Thank you.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and that's basically what this Becoming Baby book is about. It's like,
I should have read that book.
Oh, it's really, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's that though. Read the baby for sure. Read just the baby. Hyper present to the baby, and
yeah,
bebe.
That's really cool. I'm going to be selfish for a minute, and because you said course correct, and you guys look back at the month before. I am famous for not giving myself credit for the stuff that I do. So is anybody raising their hand right along?
That's okay. Natascha.
Okay.
Alegra's cool. Alegra, thank goodness Alegra's chef. It's one of the first things when I mentioned earlier that she was giving me advice on how to be. Like, I mean, we were doing a course correct, and I was like, I mentioned earlier, like that, my son had gone to the dentist and there was 0 cavities, and a whole bunch. She's like, you can put that down as an achievement for last month. Yes. So that's Alegra giving herself credit for that month. You see that? If you're on YouTube, you'll see there's a lot of stars. And Alegra's
this is an episode that you have to watch because
I mean, oh my goodness. Yeah. So she was like, you can give yourself credit for your son not having cavities. I was like, well, you're supposed to not have cavities. And, blah, blah, blah. She's like, who is the person who day in and day out, morning and night is like, brush your teeth, floss, da, da, da. She's like making the appointment, getting him there on time. She's like, that's a star. You get to say cavity-free dental appointment. That's an achievement for this month. And I was like, no, that does not feel like that. She's like, give yourself credit for it. I was super resistant to, celebrating these, that feels like a small win because you're supposed to not have cavities, right? So like, why is that why would I give myself credit for that? And it's not even my teeth, you know?
But you know what we explain
just-
though? But what we explain though is that anytime you do something that helps you live your values, you should recognize that, right? So Natascha's value of being a good mom and giving her son good hygiene, she's living that value by doing that thing. So that deserves recognition, right?
Like we want to hear it. Give yourself credit. I want to hear what it is. Go for it.
Yeah, no, I like, that's the thing is like, what's the tip? What's your tip for, because I'm thinking, I mean, as you were talking, I was like, well, I finished my surrogacy book and I went live yesterday and I'm on my Facebook page and I'm on my page and I'm terrified of being on Facebook. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe I have like trained myself to start noticing things.
They're
But
huge. Those are
like,
huge accomplishments. Finishing a
know.
book.
Yeah.
Hello.
I mean, I'm like, well, yeah, but like, because people think that I've written it in the last 4 weeks. I have written some of it in the last 4 weeks. I wrote a lot of it before in 2020. And when I was starting the surrogacy journey and it stopped because, hi, COVID.
Right.
And then I didn't touch it for like a year and a half. And then I've been putting some stuff in as I've been, pregnant. And, there's that part of you that I'm going to speak to myself. There's that part of me that wants to say, yeah, I wanted to finish it in 2020. I wanted to finish it while I was pregnant. I wanted to finish it, before January of 2023. But I finished it by January 23rd. So
that's huge. That is huge. It doesn't matter that you wrote, some of it 2 years ago. You finished it. I mean, that's gigantic. That's ginormous. Like, I really want to acknowledge you for that. Is a huge thing. That's not a small thing. That is not, I mean, not, my kids having a cavity-free dental appointment is great, but like, that's not a book. You know what I mean? It's a whole nother thing. I'm just going to pop off here for a moment because I do need to go and take care of something. I told someone I'd be available by 11, and I apologize. So I can be right back, but I'm going to leave you in Alegra's capable hands.
It's interesting. So, okay, I'm going to give you 2 tips, right? The easy tip and the more philosophical tip. Okay. The easy tip is if your friend would pat you on the back for that thing, then you should pat yourself on the back.
Okay.
Natascha just patted you on the back big time for those things. Right? Sometimes it's easier in thinking about things in terms of what other people would do, right? The second thing is that, in my opinion, happiness comes from living my values, and that looks different for everyone. I spent 4 hours the other day sorting all the screws and nails in my house into a screw and nail drawer, which allows me to live my values of conservation because I don't like to waste resources of any, monetary resources, material resources, or my time, right? It also, I have a value of doing one thing around the house that is either fixing or straightening or cleaning. And so I did that and I was having fun doing it. That's all I can, like, this was fun. This was fun for me. I get, I like puzzles too. So it's like a little bit of puzzling almost. Yeah. Fun. I would totally describe it as fun. I could have had a cocktail at that. And like, while I was doing that, it's like, this is fun. The other day, my daughter and I did soil sampling. It allowed me to live my value of spending time with my daughter, spending time outside, doing something for the environment, being of service. So anytime you're doing anything that lets you live your values, right? I'm sure you have some value around how many, how you want to give back through your books, right? Your nonfiction book, right? Maybe you haven't said this value to yourself, but clearly it's something that's important to you. So anytime you're making progress on that value, I would reward myself. And sometimes a reward is as simple as a star. Like, I love putting a star in my planner anytime. And I'm going to put a star today for the podcast, because this is, part of us getting our word out, part of people, being of service for us means more people know about us, right? This podcast helps more people know about us. So I'm putting a star there. So those are the two different ways to think about rewarding yourself, recognizing yourself.
I love that. Thank you so much for that tip. And I hope that everybody listening who is, harder on themselves than kind to themselves appreciates that tip. There is definitely an older version of myself that I'm referencing in the I don't give myself credit. But when you said course correct for last month, I was like, what did I do last month? I don't know, but yesterday I finished the book and
Yes.
I did, and I went live because my plan was to go live every day in February. And one of my friends was like, you need to go live. It was Sunday when I said that, which was the 29th of January.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, you need to go live.
Which is 2 days ago, right?
Which is
Just
2
so
days
people
ago.
know.
Yeah. So she goes, you need to go live between now and then. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. I'll go live between now and then. And so I waited till the last minute, but I went live between now and then, because I, want to be a woman of my word. And that right there is something I heard my son say. He's like, I want to be a man of my word. And I was like, yes. And I haven't even said be a woman of my word to him in front of him in a long time. They're listening. So
yeah. And being a person of your word is on our course correct. We call it, we give you a space to rate your integrity, right? Did you do what you said you were going to do?
Yeah. Love it. Thank you again for being on the podcast. Thank you, Natascha, when you're listening to the end of this episode, for being here and pouring into the guests. And thank you for the tip of how to praise myself and giving myself the credit for what I do. And thank you for what you're doing in the world.
Thank
It
you.
matters.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. There is going to be another episode of Imperfect Momming for you coming next week. And until then, keep healing. Bye, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AlysiaLyons.com. That's AlysiaLyons.com. See you next time.